Good morning, students. Today we are going to do the third part of the chapter Globalization, Foreign Trade and Integration of Markets. In the long time before, we used to have a trade between the countries. Before that, when the trade actually started, it was between the two people. Then it was within the people among in the villages. Then from village to the towns, the goods were exported. Then from one corner of the country to the another corner of the country, the goods were exported. Then started a trade which is called as foreign trade, where the goods were exchanged between the countries also. From India, a lot of raw material were exported through the water routes, especially. Now, because of this trade interest only, a British company called as East India Company that had arrived into India. It is mainly for the trade. So what then is actually the basic function of foreign trade? To put it simply, foreign trade creates an opportunity for the producers to reach beyond their domestic market. So what is foreign trade? It actually gives the producers an opportunity where they can sell their goods beyond their own country. Domestic market means their own country's market. So if now they have, because of this foreign trade, they are getting an opportunity to sell their goods even in the other countries. So producers can sell their produce not only within their market, which is located within their country, but now they are able to compete in the markets which are located in many countries of the world. In the same manner, even the consumers or the buyers like us, we are able to get the benefit of this foreign trade where the import of goods produced in another country is in one way expanding the choice of goods beyond what is domestically produced. So we are getting the goods, even the foreign goods sitting in our country. It is because of a lot of exchange taking place at the international level. So for us, as a consumer, a lot of choice of goods has been widened. Now, there is a very good example which tells about the foreign trade, that is Chinese toys in India. There was a time when Indian shops, that is the toy shops, were filled with only the Indian toys which were produced by our Indian producers. But when the government reduced the taxes on the import, at that time many Chinese manufacturers, they came to know that in India the toys are expensive. That is, the toys made by Indian producers, they were expensive. So when the Chinese manufacturers came to know this, they started exporting their toys to India. So their producers producing the plastic toys, they were sent into India because in India the imports were cheap, because the government has removed that much amount of the tax on the import. Buyers in India now have the option of choosing between Indian and the Chinese toys. As a consumer, we had now the choices. That is, we can buy Indian toys also, Chinese toys also. But the consumers preferred to buy the Chinese toys because Chinese toys were in a lot of variety with new designs, and they were much cheaper than our Indian toys. So, within just a span of time, all the markets were popular, and they were filled with the only Chinese toys. So, within a year, 70 to 80% of the toy shops have replaced our Indian toys with the Chinese toys. So most of the shops which used to sell earlier the Indian produced toys now are selling the Chinese toys. Toys are now cheaper in the Indian markets than earlier. What is happening here in this example? As a result of the foreign trade, Chinese toys come into the Indian market. And in the competition between the Indian and the Chinese toys, it is the Chinese toys prove better. So, because of this foreign trade, many Chinese toys came to India and our Indian producers went into a great loss because the consumers started preferring the Chinese toys. So, the Chinese toys were giving us a lot of choice and also the lower prices. So, consumers preferred these toys. So, for the Chinese toy makers, this provides an opportunity to expand business. So, for the Chinese toy makers, it was profit for them because they are able to expand their business into our country. They are doing foreign trade. But on the other hand, it is our Indian producers, toy producers, who faced a lot of losses as their toys are selling much less now in the market. So let's sum up this example. What is happening in this example? Because the Chinese toys are now coming to India, our Indian consumers are also preferring the Chinese toys. The producers of Chinese toys are getting the profit and the Indian producers of toy makers are getting a great loss. Here, our Indian producers have to compete with the producers of China, that is the toy producers of China. So both the markets. Now what do you mean by the markets integration? Here market integration means a market is a place where the selling and buying takes place and there are two main components of the market, that is producers and the consumers. So the producers of Chinese toys now are having competition with the producers of the Indian toys. So our market, and that is the Indian market and the Chinese toy market, is now interconnected with each other. Any change in any of the country, any change in say prices or import and export of any of the country, that is going to change the whole loss and profit of the producers. For example, suppose even if Indian producers lessen their prices, what will happen? Nobody will import the Chinese toys. So the Chinese producers then will go in loss. So that is how our markets are today very, very well linked with one another. That is why in the whole today it's not only two countries, it's the example of two countries. Today the whole world is linked with one another. That is why whenever there is any kind of recession takes place in any part of the world, any kind of trade change takes place in any part of the world, that is going to affect the whole world, all the countries of the world, because today all countries of the world are interconnected with each other. Their markets are integrated with each other. So in general, with the opening of trade, goods travel from one market to another market. Generally, what's happened when the trade opens in the countries, it is the goods actually which travels from one country to another. Choice of the goods for the consumers, they increases. When the choice of goods increases, that means when there are more number of producers, so the competition is more among the producers, the prices of the similar goods in the two markets tend to become equal. When the Chinese toys came to India, they were sold at low price. So if our Indian producers had to withstand in the competition, even they had to reduce the price. Because if they will not reduce the price, their toys will not be sold. So the prices generally becomes almost equal, and producers in the two countries. So the producers in the two countries now are competing with each other. So that means the producer of the Chinese toys and the producer of the Indian toy makers both are competing with each other. Even they are sitting far off, thousands of miles, there is a competition between these two markets. So we sum up that foreign trade thus results in connecting the markets or integration of markets in different countries. So foreign trade is today allowing the markets to get connected with one another. They are linked with one another. Even if anything happens in one country, the other link automatically will get affected. That is the result of the foreign trade. So let's now do some of the questions which are located just below this part, which is related to foreign trade. That is the first question. What was the main channel connecting the countries in the past? It was trade. What was the main channel connecting countries in the past? It was trade. How is it different from now? Today, it is not only the goods are exchanged between the countries, it is today the production is done in the different countries. In the earlier days, it was the foreign trade or trade which was taking place between the countries, but today it is the production taking place in the different countries. Now we have the second question. Distinguish between foreign trade and foreign investment. When goods move from one country to another country, or when the producers of one country they compete with the producers of another country, that we call it as foreign trade. What is foreign investment? When multinational corporation or any big company or a multinational corporation, when they buy any asset means it can be a land, it can be a property, or it can be a factory or industry. So when any foreign company or a multinational corporation, it buys an asset in another country other than their own country, in another country, that investment is called as foreign investment. For example, Ford Motors, which you have studied earlier. When Ford Motors came to India, they had set up their own uh, plant in Chennai. They spent near about 1700 crores of rupees. So that 1700 crores is their foreign investment because they are doing in our country. So that's the difference between foreign trade and foreign investment. The next question is your question number 3. In recent years, China has been importing steel from India. Children, you have to understand this line first. Then only you can understand the rest of the questions. So what is China doing? China is importing, getting steel from our country. That means we, our country, India is exporting steel, they are importing steel. Now the question is, how this import of steel by China will affect these three parts. First one, steel companies in China. The companies which are producing raw steel in China, they will go in loss because the Chinese big company owners, those who are making it as a finished product, they are not buying steel from their own country companies. They are buying steel from India. So their own steel companies will go in loss. Second, steel companies in India, we will get profit because we are exporting steel to China or China is buying from us. Third part, industries buying steel for production of other industrial goods in China. The industry that is in China, the big industries which are manufacturing this steel into industrial goods, they are buying steel from India. Why they are buying steel from India? Because by buying steel from India, they are able to save their cost. That means they are getting profit. their industries, I'm repeating here, industries means the industries in China which are converting the raw steel into finished product. Maybe they are using in manufacturing of cars or manufacturing of industries. So those industries, they are getting benefit. That is why they are importing steel from India. Otherwise, why they will import steel from India? They are getting profit, so they are importing steel from our country. Next question. How will the import of steel from India into Chinese markets lead to integration of markets for steel in the two countries? Explain. Children, this question number 4 is very important because it tells that how two markets are getting integrated, which we have done in the case of Chinese toys. Same here. Here, the Indian producers of steel and the Chinese steel producers, they both are competing with each other. Second thing, if suppose the steel makers of China, the raw steel makers of China also reduce their prices, what will happen? Then the Chinese in big industries will buy steel from their own producers. They will not buy from India. What will happen to India? Our Indian market will go in loss. So that is how our markets are interlinked with one another. So that completes this part. Then we come to the next part of the chapter, that is, what is globalization? Now, after doing all the examples which are related to globalization, now we have come to the meaning of globalization. It is because of MNCs, that is multinational corporations, that today the globalization is possible. We all have seen with lots of examples that multinational corporations, they locate their industries, factories or companies in the world, in that part of the world where they can get cheap labor and cheap production. By doing this, they are able to get 50 to 60% of the profit. Foreign investment by the multinational corporations in these countries has been rising. So the foreign investment which is made by MNCs in the world is tremendously gone up. For example, in India itself, you can see there are so many multinational corporations who have set up their own factories, industries and companies in India from all over the world. At the same time, it is the foreign trade between the countries that has increased a lot. Because these multinational corporations today are entered into the world of globalization where they are producing the goods globally, because of that, there is so much of integration of markets, there is so much of foreign trade between the countries, and a large part of foreign trade is also controlled by the multinational corporations. So who controls this foreign trade? It is the big companies like Reliance, Infosys. If you talk about Indian companies, Reliance, Infosys, etc. Then we have so many foreign companies, multinational corporations. With all these multinational corporations with crores of rupees they have, they're so rich, and they are the ones who are controlling this whole foreign trade. For example, the Ford Motors company in India not only produces cars for our market, it also exports cars to other developing countries and exports car components for many factories around the world. It is an American company, Ford Motors, which came to India in Chennai, set up their own factory. And India, they are selling their cars. Not only in India, they are selling their cars even abroad. And they are even exporting the components which are made in these factories in the all over the world. So MNCs involve in a lot of trade in goods and also the services. So MNCs, it is because of MNCs today there is globalization. If there would have not been MNCs, we cannot even think of the globalization. So the result of greater foreign trade and foreign investment has been greater integration of production and markets across the countries. because there is more foreign trade and foreign investment taking place at present, because of which today the integration of the production is taking place. That is, one country's production is linked with the other country's production. Suppose we stop producing steel in our country, the China's industries which are converting that steel and which are using that steel in many other industries, they all will go in loss. So that's how the integration of the production and the integration of markets is taking place. So now let's do the meaning of globalization. Globalization is this process of rapid integration, interconnection between the countries. So globalization means the process of rapid integration which is taking place between the countries, and it is the MNCs which are playing a major role in the globalization process. So you get generally a question that what is the role played by the MNCs in the globalization process? So you can give example of the Ford Motors to explain this answer, that how this Ford Motors, which is an MNC, is integrating the trade with our country's market and with the other country's market. More and more goods are moving from one country to another country. Services are moving from one country to another country. Investments are moving. Technology is moving between the countries. And today, most regions of the world are in closer contact with each other than a few decades back. Few decades back, maybe there was just connection between one country with the other. But today, one country is connected with several multiple countries at a time. So today, the whole world has become like a village. Everything is connected with one another. So small village, it has become, the whole world is. Why we are talking about small village? Because today, sitting in one corner of the world, a person is able to produce the goods globally. He is able to manage. There is no need even that person to travel to another country. That person is able to manage everything sitting in one place with so much of technology. So that's how it has become a small village. So besides the movement of goods, services, investment and technology, today there is one more thing which is traveling between the countries, and that is the people. Why do people move from one country to another? It is because of the better income, better jobs and better education mainly. But I think few years, just maybe from last 10 years, there are few restrictions by few countries for the movement of the people because of the increased populations in their countries, because of the scarcity of the resources. Some countries have put some restrictions upon the movement. We have few questions here. The first question is, what is the role of multinational corporation in the globalization process? This I told you just now. You can explain with the help of the example of the Ford Motors, which is a multinational corporation, how it had come to India, set up its factory, and it is able to work, and it has connected the markets. So that is the globalization process. Or you can give example of even that first example where a laptop has to be made and its parts are made in China and its call centers are in India. That example you can give, where all these markets are connected with one another and production is done globally. What are the various ways in which countries are linked today? Countries are linked today with the goods, services, investment, technology, and people. All are moving from one country to another country. So all are interconnected with one another. What is the one term, like one small meaning of globalization is production across the countries. Globalization means producing the goods across countries. Children, you should be very clear. It is not selling goods. It is producing the goods across the countries. Globalization by connecting countries shall result in the globalization by connecting countries shall result in greater competition among producers. This is the answer. Because of globalization today, the competition among the producers is increased. Like as I told you, Indian toy makers have to compete with the so many other toy makers in the world. Like that, the steel making companies of India have to compete with the so many other steel companies of the world. So there is so much of competition among producers, but this helps for the consumers, because when there is a competition between producers, we get a better quality of the goods and choice of the goods increases, as well as the prices will be very low. So today, children, that's all for today. You have done the meaning of globalization. In the next video, I'll continue with the factors that have enabled globalization. Just now I told you that a company or a multinational company of America sitting in America, their call center is in India. Their parts are made in China. How a person sitting in one place is able to control all the production of the world? Is he visiting India daily? Definitely not. So sitting there, he is able to even pay the labor who is working in the call centers in India. This all is because of the technology which has been improved in the world. Technology, that is mainly the IT sector as well as the transportation sector. So these both we will discuss in the next class with the examples. So that's all, children. Have a good